Welcome to Gritty is the New Pretty, where resilience meets real talk. I'm your host, Krystle, entrepreneur, leadership coach, change maker, and outdoor enthusiast. Join me as I sit down with powerhouse women leaders, entrepreneurs, and small business owners who share their raw, unfiltered stories of success, struggle, and the grit it takes to make an impact. From navigating change to redefining success, we'll explore what it takes to rise, lead, and thrive. Expect raw conversations to fuel your journey, whether you're breaking down barriers in life or in business. We're redefining success, not by perfection, but by the strength it takes to rise again and again, because in this space, gritty is the new pretty. Hit subscribe and let's get gritty with it. This episode is sponsored by Hey Beck's Creative House, founded by brand strategist Becky LaFranchi, known for building crave-worthy brands that blend story, soul, and strategy. Explore the work at heybecks.com. On today's podcast of Gritty is the New Pretty, I'm excited to welcome Hayleigh Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast management agency. And Hayleigh is also the host of two podcasts, Employee to Boss, focusing on entrepreneurship and business growth, and the Podcast Café, a show that aims to elevate the craft of podcasting for both beginners and seasoned creators. Welcome, Hayleigh.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I always start off with having everyone tell us about you, your story. What can you share with us today?
Absolutely. So, like you said, my name is Hayleigh Hayhurst. I'm based in Seattle. That's actually how I met you, Krystle.
Mm-hmm.
So, I run Espresso Podcast Production, where I help businesses start and scale their podcasts. I help them with the marketing of it, the actual editing of it. There's so many parts of podcasting that people don't want to deal with. So, I make it easy for them. All they do is press record, and I handle the rest. I love doing this. I actually have been doing this since 2018 with my own podcast and then started my own business in 2020. So we could talk all about that journey. I started it pretty young. I started my business when I was 22. So that was a whole thing in itself. But yeah, I mean, I love all things podcasting.
So, did you start doing the podcast knowing that you wanted to do podcast production, or did that sort of evolve from you starting your podcast?
Yeah, no, I had no idea that podcast production was even a job when I first started my first podcast. So I was in college. I went to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I was studying journalism, and I thought that I was first going to go into like broadcast television. I decided that wasn't for me. So then I switched my niche or my focus into social media and like journalism writing. And that was when the podcast studios were presented to me and a friend. We were working the same job and we had a lot of downtime in this job. So we would just chat and we found some similar interests and decided that we should just start a podcast because we had access to the studios. It'd be good for us just to learn like the editing and the research and everything that goes into it. And I didn't see her very much outside of work, so we just thought it'd be fun to do. So that was what prompted our first podcast. We did that she actually still does it to this day. I love that for her. And I moved up to Seattle during the pandemic after I had graduated and took a step away from that podcast, but it was a connection I had from Las Vegas. It was my cousin's cousin was like, "Hey, Hayleigh, I know that you used to have a podcast. Do you mind managing mine for me? I'll pay you because I don't have time to. This is more work than I thought it was." And she was she had a personal branding business back then. And during the pandemic, everyone was building a personal brand. So she was booked and busy. So me being unemployed was like, "Thank you. I will absolutely take any sort of money that you'll give me." So I started editing for her show, writing the show notes. I mean, it was really stuff that I already knew how to do. It was everything I was doing for my own podcast. So after about a month of doing that, my 5-year anniversary of my business is also coming up. But after about a month in that, She was like, "I know so many business owners who need help with podcasting. Do you want me to refer them to you?" And I was like, "I mean, I guess." So that was how my business was born, and started off just with referrals, got a few clients, I think around like 4 or 5, and then started actually marketing and then grew my business from there.
Wow, that's a really cool story. And I love stories that start with the word of mouth referral.
Mhm.
Because it really shows that you, number one, found a niche. Number two, that you were good at what you were doing, because people aren't going to refer you if they're like, "Ooh, that wasn't a great experience." So, way to
Yeah.
knock it out of the park there.
Oh, thank you.
So, what are some tips and tricks for people wanting to start a podcast?
Yeah, so about 2 years into my business, I realized that I had all these great clients who were putting out great episodes, but sometimes they were random episodes. Sometimes their podcast wasn't bringing them the results they wanted to see, so they were stopping it. And I really took a look at what was going on, and I realized it's because they didn't have strategy. They didn't know why they were podcasting, or they didn't know what the purpose was. All of these different things. It didn't even tie to their business in some cases. They were just doing it for fun, and then we're like, well, this is actually a lot of work. Where are the results? And it ended up burning them out, and really just they stopped it. So, the number one thing that I think every podcaster should think about before even starting their show is, what results will make you feel successful? And what's the strategy behind why you're starting? Success means different thing to every single podcaster. I don't have any two clients that are alike in the way that would make them feel successful. Sometimes my clients are like, "I would be happy with, 40 listens on an episode." And then I have clients that are like, "If I don't get over 1,000, this isn't worth my time." It's so different across the board, and sometimes it doesn't even come down to the listenership. Sometimes they want clients from it, sometimes it's marketing materials, sometimes it's a lead generation source for, you know, anyone to land. There's so many different ways that you could podcast, and so, number 1, I always think that every podcaster should look at their strategy and what would make them feel successful and make it worth it.
I like it. So I have a podcast, obviously. Gritty is the new
Yes.
pretty. I mean, that's not a secret here. So what I you've heard like my intro, and what I want to do is, obviously, since I have you on, I'm gonna like kill two birds with one stone, which is get your expertise. But I would love to open up this opportunity for some real live feedback on my
Mhm,
podcast, and even like the processes of getting you set up to be a guest. I started Gritty is the New Pretty during the pandemic, when we couldn't do in-person events for Grit City Women. And so essentially now my goal with Gritty is the New Pretty is to really carry that spirit of those events, where we would have women, guest speakers every month, come and essentially share their story and share tips and tricks about
mhm.
their expertise, in a way that we could obviously do it during the pandemic where we were on lockdown. Now my life has changed significantly. I am married, I've got another baby on the way, all sorts of other things, but I still want to elevate women's voices and educate women, and be able to help another woman with a story, even if it's one woman an episode that's like, this was helpful for me, or this changed the
Mhm.
way I feel about something, or I don't feel so alone on my journey. That's kind of my goal. I should probably be more strategic business wise. I'm just not in that space at the moment, but that's where I'm at. So, I mean, I would love any insight as we're talking about this for the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. So, I love that, and I think you're definitely achieving that with your podcast. When I say strategy, I mean, not every podcast needs, like, to be looking at their analytics every week and really diving deep into, like, "Oh, is this working? Oh, is this working?" Because ultimately your goal is to share stories and connect with your listeners in a way that will impact them. So, I find that sometimes overanalyzing
Mhm.
the data of the podcast can actually hinder you more than actually looking at it. Sometimes so I help people with their podcasting and I look at a few different spots. So one is content, one is how they're marketing it, and then what's the funnel, and then what are the trends in the podcast. So we can kind of break down those four parts. So I love your intro.
Thank
This is all
you.
the content piece. I love the intro. I think that it definitely shares just the right amount of information to get people hooked and know exactly what they're getting into for the next 30 to 40 to 50, whatever, however long the
Yeah.
episode is, because it's almost like a handshake,
Mhm.
right? You want to say, "Hey, thanks for listening. This is what you can expect." So, 100%, I love that. I also love how you put your sponsor in the beginning too. I find that this is a spot where a lot of people put it in like the middle or the end.
Mhm.
And what I have to say is with podcasting, you can look at the data, but very like not everyone is going to make it to the end of the episode.
Mhm.
So if you are promoting yourself or your sponsor at the end, only maybe 60% will hear it, sometimes less, sometimes more, and most people will just tune out. So I think those two things are fantastic. I love that. I was looking at your social media too to kind of go over to the second part, which is marketing. You're sharing reels, you're sharing your merch. You have a lot of community over there. I think that tapping more into the community could be a space for collaboration. Like, are you engaging the podcast listeners? Are you asking them like, maybe like a monthly Q&A or a weekly Q&A, or having like a form where they could submit their own questions or topics that they want to hear about? Since everything you do is so community driven, I think that could be a spot to tap into
Mhm.
even more. Because that makes them like feel excited
Yeah.
about it, right? That makes
Well,
them feel
that's great. I love that because I
yeah.
have looked at my analytics, because I'm curious, I wanted to make sure at least
Mhm.
somebody was listening, and there are people
For
that
sure.
listen. So if you are listening and you are like a consistent listener, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Would love to hear from you. Please DM us or me, and any questions or feedback. Just I'm really appreciative of the support. But I realized that I have listeners in Ireland, which is
Oh,
so if
fun.
you're listening and you're from Ireland, hello. I would love to just say hi because I don't know who you are, but there is somebody who listens in Ireland. I'm just so curious of like how you even found Grit City Women.
Mhm.
But my question is for you with the social media. My main social media is Grit City Women. Because that's where
Mhm.
I started with Grit City Women. But the podcast name is Gritty is the New Pretty, which I also created an Instagram account for. But it's just not it's just not my main account. I don't have as many followers on it. What should I do there? Like, is that a missed opportunity, or should I just focus where my followers are? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen this pop up a lot lately of having two separate Instagram accounts, and if you can manage it 100%, my recommendation is it depends on how many clips you're pulling from your podcast, because we don't wanna, like, weigh down our main social media with a bunch of podcast content, because usually the podcast isn't our main business,
Hmm.
right? It's not even my main business, and I'm a podcast manager.
Right.
So I always share a few reels of the podcast clips onto my own social media, but for my clients that have 2, what I recommend is like obviously putting it in the bio of the main Instagram and vice versa. And then you could also add yourself as a collaborator on the posts on just a few. So then you can get the reach on the podcast Instagram that you might desire, or if you just want to use it as a resource to post extra content. That's what I would do with the two. So for me personally, I just have everything on my main page just because the podcast kind of ties into my business and, same with yours. But I have a business coach. Her name is Kate Perkovic, and she has you know, her main Instagram, and then she puts out 5 clips per episode on her podcast Instagram, and she uses that more for like she's building a whole brand off of that. So if you have the intention to build a separate brand from your podcast, that's when I'd say definitely, definitely, definitely separate the two. But if you're only posting one clip or so from the show, I always say it's easier to keep them
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
It is like a case by case basis, but that's usually my recommendation.
Yeah, I have started doing the collaborator because I don't want to
Yeah.
saturate my Grit City Women content with just reels, even though the reels are awesome.
Mhm.
So okay, that's good advice. And I think we were on like the second strat marketing, and then there were four tips, I think, or four areas. I think I interrupted you in your
Yes.
flow of.
Oh my gosh. No, no, no. Please pause me. I love like diving deeper into these. So the next spot that I look at, yeah, so marketing, we look at, what you're posting, all of that. The next thing that I usually look at is the funnels in the podcast. So this could be lead magnets, freebies. This could be an invite to your newsletter, an ask to follow on social media. And this is where the strategy comes in because you can have people listening to your show and you have this maybe like a free ebook or workbook or a quiz that they can take, and that might send them to your email list. This is what I see a lot. And then you get to the email list and you're never sending emails. So that's almost like a waste opportunity of you're sending people somewhere, they're actually taking the action, and then you're not nurturing them from there. Another thing that I see often is just, asking just, like, really not a strong call to action of, "Well, if you wanna download this, this is here," or not mentioning it enough, or just putting it in the show notes. The show notes is part of the content piece. That's a really great place that a lot of businesses don't optimize as much as they can. But if you're just putting your lead magnets in the show notes and never mentioning it, it's going to be hard to convert those. It's all about nurturing, right? Podcasting, if you think of it as a funnel, is like, yes, they might find your podcast episode. Maybe a friend sent it to them, or maybe they saw a clip on social media. Like they somehow came across it. Then it's up to you to be able to nurture them to then get into your atmosphere more, and then if you want to sell to them, that's when you can sell. But it's a big nurturing platform. So that's usually the third thing that I look at when I look at like podcasting and dive into that data.
I never thought of that. I never thought of it that way. But I guess I don't send out a lot of emails because I hate getting emails. But I also don't push my email that much either. So I think it's good feedback for when I do want to start being more visible and start, like you said, nurturing that. If I'm not prepared to nurture it, then that's not where my effort should really be at that point.
Yeah, well, I mean, it can always change too,
Mhm.
is the thing. Like, I have clients that have different asks in their episodes. Like sometimes they're hosting a masterclass, or sometimes they're hosting, an event, or sometimes it's like they have different things that they're pushing through different seasons. So it should, the thing about events is you always want to make sure that whatever you're talking about in your podcast has an evergreen sense to it, because you might have an event next week, and if you're only talking about it the week before and you look at, you know, the trends in your podcast, and some people listen week of, but most people listen like a month later or whenever it comes up in the SEO, like there's so many details in it, and I don't wanna make it feel overwhelming because it's podcasting is so fun and it's such a good tool just to get your message out and connect with your audience and nurture them. Like, I don't wanna make it feel overwhelming, but if you are using it for business, these are the things that you wanna look at to make sure that it's working
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So those were the first 3: content, Then we talked about the funnels.
What's
Oh
the
my gosh, I'm
what's the
blanking. What was the
funnels?
fourth
Are
one?
the funnels the, like, emails and stuff like that? Is that what you mean when you say funnels? Okay.
Yep. Mhm. Mhm. Yep. So content, yeah, so beyond that, I always think that you should look at the data. So there are some things to look at in the data where you want to see how many people are listening. Depending on your hosting platform, it shows you when people are dropping off. If you're
Mm,
using like Spotify for creators, it'll show you like the audience retention, like how much consumption your episodes are having. Apple Podcast Connect shows this too. So I always look at those two places. But no, there's just so much good stuff with it.
and to see that information, do you have to, like, have an account with them, like a podcasting account, or is it accessible just on how you got it on there?
Yeah, so it depends on your podcast
Mhm.
host. So, like for you, where do you upload your podcasts to get them out
So I
into the
use
world?
Zencaster, and that's how it reaches the other platforms. Somewhere along the beginning, I did some things that worked, and now they get uploaded into Spotify and Apple. I could not tell you how I did it, but the app Zencaster obviously walked me through it. I used to use in the beginning. I used
Yeah.
Audio Boom. Um, and I think I kind of outgrew it a little bit. Zencaster had a lot of other features that I was interested in, and I ended up trying it and liking it. So far, it's been working for me, and I feel like I'm not even using it to the most of its capabilities right now. So there's some learning there, but yeah. So that's what all I do is I upload it on Zencaster, and then it goes out into the other ones. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, so Zencaster should does it give you like insights into
it gives
everything?
me um metrics on, are people using like Apple or Android
Mhm.
or web, like computer? Gives me
Yeah.
metrics on listens, when they're listening, times, days, etc. Um, Metrics of locations of where like my audience is, but I haven't seen anything, and maybe I'm not sure what I'm looking at when I'm looking at. I'm gonna have to look closer now. I'm not sure if it gives me that retention information. So that's why I was
Mhm.
asking, like, is there a way
Mhm.
that I would get it off of Apple or Spotify?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, so you're gonna go to Spotify for
Okay.
Creators. You'll create an account on there. That'll show you some insights, and then the other one is Apple Podcast
Mhm.
Connect. You already have an account on this if your podcast goes to
Oh,
Apple
okay, good to
Podcasts,
know.
so you'll just log in. Yep. See, it's all things you only have to set
Yeah,
up
I
once, and
never looked
then
at it again.
it's easy to
Yeah.
forget.
I'm like, I think I
Yeah.
have an account. Okay, so I do probably have accounts. I just need to log into them and look at it. Cool.
Yep. Yep. But that'll give you a lot of data to look
Good.
at.
See, I'm learning lots of stuff here. This is awesome.
Mhm.
Okay. So we've talked about some of the strategy, and it seems like it's pretty unique to each business. What
Mhm.
are some tips to, if people are looking to sort of elevate their business, what through their podcast? What are some tips outside of what we've already talked about that you might be able to offer?
Yeah. So, number 1, I think about your podcast and your business as, like a marriage, right? They should be together. They should be working together. So, if you have a launch in your business, make sure that your podcast episodes are supporting that. So, let's say, Crystal, you have an event coming up. Let's say the event is well, do you have any events
No,
coming up
I'm
soon?
having a baby, so I'm gonna disappear. I'm
Right, right.
disappearing for a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's use the example of, like, you're
Mhm.
having a baby. So the next phase of your life is motherhood with 2 children, right? I don't have children, but I'm assuming there's a big jump from 1 to 2. At least that's what it looks like to me when I see, family members or friends that have multiple children. So maybe you wanna talk more about how you're going to make mom life and business life work, and maybe you want to talk about
Mhm, mhm.
schedules, right? Let's say you're going to have this online virtual event where you're talking about optimizing your calendar to work with your life, like make your life work with your business and not feel overwhelming. Okay, this is like a made up event
Thank
that I'm
you.
making for you.
Thanks.
Okay, so oh my gosh, of course. So you're gonna want your podcast episodes to kind of build up to that. And I always think it should be like a 3-month build up. So let's say this event we're recording real time in April. So the event's gonna be end of July. From now until July, you're gonna want to be reinforcing why
Mm,
it matters. You're gonna want to be reinforcing, okay, you're overwhelmed, but why do you want to add this to your plate of like figuring out how to deal with multiple
right.
schedules or, so that could be a topic. What else are you going to care about? You're going to think about, you know, when you can even have time for yourself, or does my business need to sit on the
Mhm,
back burner? These are topics that, those frequently asked questions, that's what you're gonna want to talk about up until the event. And throughout that, you're gonna be talking about this event that you're
mhm.
hosting, really building buzz around it. But every single podcast episode should be reinforcing that. Now, if you have guests, find some guests that reinforce that. Maybe let them know what you're doing. Maybe find like a time
Mhm.
scheduler, or like a coach who talks about managing your time and business. There's
Right.
so
Yeah.
many aligned things out there. So that's where I see a lot of opportunities for like
Planning out your
alignment
communication.
from the
Yeah.
podcast and the
I love
business.
the idea of
Yep.
having guests that
Yeah.
are similar to what the event is gonna be and building that up. That's a great idea. So I have one
Yeah.
more question,
Yeah.
and it's literally something I know nothing about, but how do I monetize my podcast?
Okay, this is a good question. And I have a lot of thoughts about this,
Good.
to be honest. So there's a couple different ways to monetize your podcast. One is through like affiliate marketing, right? That's one way. Another way is sponsors, if you're going to have someone sponsor the episode. And the third way is through marketing your own business. So I find that as business owners, we are so fast to want to find like the next big sponsor, or, you know, when is X, Y, and Z going to sponsor me? I see them sponsoring all these other shows. Or with affiliate marketing, putting all these ads in your podcast when you only get like 15% back,
Mhm.
or, whatever that affiliate promo is. And what we're missing is talking about our own businesses. We're missing putting our own commercials in. So that's where I see a lot of podcasts can monetize, because if you look at the numbers, a podcast sponsor, if you go with like a big company, usually pay like $50 per 1,000 listens. It's
No,
not
that's
that
nothing.
much. And a lot of the podcasts I work with aren't getting
Mhm.
1,000 listens, right? They're more niche. They're not going to be like the Call Her Daddy level podcasting, or, Diary of a CEO level. And that's okay. They could still have that impact on the
Mhm.
people's lives who are listening to them without that reach. So, I always say, like, your services are probably more
Right.
than $50, and so focus
The
on
service.
selling,
Yeah.
building that trust to sell your
Yeah.
service. That's where I see a lot of opportunities, and if a sponsor comes, I have clients that do get sponsors.
Yeah.
Amazing. Great, we love that. That's just like a cherry on top. But if you're looking at it from only looking for sponsors or only looking for affiliates, I think that's,
Right.
promote your own brand. I have some affiliates on my show, like editing softwares and
Mm.
email, hosts, like CRMs and stuff that I would be talking about anyways, but I really don't go out of my way to be like, yes, use my
Right.
HelloFresh link and
And
I
so the
will,
affiliates, essentially, do they give you a little kickback for every episode, or how does that work?
Oh, I just got an error message on my screen.
It
Does it all
does
look
look
good
good
on
on
your
my
side?
side.
Okay. It says problem saving local backup
Oh,
audio.
it's
Well, we can keep going and see.
yeah. I mean,
Right?
it's still working on mine. At least through the
Okay.
Zencaster. Knock on wood.
Okay. Yep. Knock on wood. I'm sure it's fine. Okay. Sorry. You're going to have to do some edits in this. My
That's
bad.
okay. So the affiliate, how does the affiliate marketing work with like your affiliates?
Yeah, so they give me the affiliates, they give me a unique code, and so basically whenever anyone signs up on
Mhm.
those links, I'll get a percentage of what they spent. So every affiliate has a different agreement, but normally they'll have like an affiliate partnership
Got it.
page. It's at the bottom of the page and you could just join, but they won't pay you
Something,
unless people are
yeah, and
actually
it's
taking
spending
action.
money. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I would say I sort of am monetizing. I didn't really realize I was, which makes me sound silly, but I've had sponsors before, and I have a sponsor
Mhm.
now, and I I am very picky about my sponsors in the sense that
Mhm.
it's really important to me that Grit City Women has the freedom to be gritty as a new pretty. And when you have sponsors involved, sometimes it can influence content or discussion on your podcast. And so I don't really necessarily go too much out of my way to like hunt down sponsors at the moment. But they
Mhm.
are a great way to at least fund your podcast and fund, if you need a production person to help you out, or if you just want to pay for your subscription to your platform or whatever, there are great ways to do that. So I love the idea of sponsors. And then, yeah, I think you're spot on about doing the marketing your services and using that, because that is where you make money. And most of us, at least the women that I roll with in Grit City Women, their services are of value. So definitely marketing through that. So that's
Mhm.
really sound piece of advice. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to go over that. Um, so what is your biggest piece of advice that you would offer Grit City women?
Mm. I think as women, we need to use our voices more, and whether that's showing up online more, showing up in your community more, or if it is showing up in a podcast, this is such a big opportunity for us to impact our communities, leave, our message in the world, and who knows how long our podcast will be
Mhm.
around, right? People could find this so long from now. And so I think as women, we need to be speaking up more and showing up more. I mean, we've seen this a lot lately with, I won't get into the whole political field, but, with the last election, a podcast made a huge impact on the results, right? And I saw so many people say, "How could they do that? How could they do that? Like, why does this podcast have so many listens?" And that's because people are giving it the attention and they're showing up every week. So, my challenge to women is if you don't like the voices being amplified, speak up. You could be that voice. That's where I've been putting my messaging all around. I really just want to inspire more women to speak up and share
Mhm.
our voices, and there's so many ways to do that. So
Yeah, I
that's my
love that. I
advice.
remember when we were at the live event in February, somebody said, and I don't remember the exact
Mhm,
statistic, the ratio of men podcasters to women podcasters. And of course, it was pretty small amount of women podcasters out there. And I agree. I just think that regardless, everyone has different beliefs, and women have different beliefs across the spectrum, that um we may or may
mhm,
not agree with, but just having space for women to be visible and to share those, I think is really important. And I think it's valuable. And so that's one of the reasons why I also continue to do this with Grit City Women, is just having various women from our community be able to come and elevate themselves and talk about their story and their brand and share their voice. And I've learned so much from all of my guests, and I really consider it an honor and a privilege to be able to essentially be a student for 30 minutes from every woman that sits here. And so I hope that others find value in it. And I appreciate your advice, and thank you so much for joining us.
My gosh, thank you so much for having me, Krystle. You're killing it with your podcast. Like you were
Oh,
saying,
thank
what could I
you.
do better? But I honestly think you're doing great.
Oh,
So I'm really
thanks.
happy that you have this out in the world for all the women to listen to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I always am asking for feedback, and I feel like I think people are always like, it's good, but I'm like, is it really good? Or is it,
Yeah.
you want to, so having your expertise and having that opportunity to be like, okay. And I give myself grace. I know it's not perfect, or I'm not perfect, or I don't get things out as fast as I would like with my lifestyle. But, it's nice to hear that. So I appreciate that.
Oh my gosh, of course. Well, thank you so much for having me today.
Of course. Born from the spirit of Grit City Women, Gritty is the New Pretty carries the torch, amplifying the voices, stories, and power of women who lead with resilience, purpose, and unapologetic grit. To support Gritty is the New Pretty. Follow us on Instagram at Grit City Women, or shop our online store at gritcitywomen.com.